Hello and welcome back. In this module, we're going to look at some of the practical risks that you'll come across as you go about your everyday business life and some of the personal stuff as well. So what are the sources of risk? Well, let's consider three scenarios. Let's think about the risks you're likely to face in the office, the risks you're likely to face at home, and when you're on the move, when you're out and about, when you're not in any fixed location at all. Right? We're going to ask you to spot and avoid risks in all those situations. So are you ready? Okay. First one, in the office. Let's assume that you're sat in a fixed location, you're using an office supplied computer, you're sat down and that thing is wired in physically, there's no wireless, there's no flexible connections to the rest of the infrastructure, and you're behind a nice corporately provided firewall with all the antivirus and everything in place. So what could possibly go wrong? Well, let's take you through a scenario. You receive an email. Actually you could receive it on your mobile or you could receive it on your computer. It doesn't really matter. You receive an email. Look at the one behind me. Tell me if you think that looks genuine. And then click on the link. Well, let's see what happens if you click on the link. If you press and hold the link, and this is on a mobile device, but if you do hover over the link on your desktop PC, and you look at the actual address that it's going to, you'll see that's nothing to do with Lloyds Bank. This is a phishing email, right? And phishing and spam are two of the main ways that the bad guys get you to infect yourself, right? They will ask you to go and download software, install it on computers, and you might like to think that the firewalls and antivirus will sort this out, but they won't, because quite often all those things can be bypassed. So those scams of phishing and email those scams aren't just limited to email, but they're also prevalent on social networks as well. How many times have you been on, I don't know, Facebook, and you've seen an offer for, I don't know, Ray-Ban glasses at £5. Just click here. Well, that tends to be a phishing attack. So the same rules apply on social networks. If in doubt, don't click on it, right? And that's online ads, status updates, tweets, right? Any other post you can think of, anywhere on the internet. So let's just look at, if you did click on the link, what would happen? Where do those links go? Well, even on the social media sites, you can click on a link and maybe it's asking you to log into Twitter, for example. Well, let's just look at this Twitter login page. Looks fairly genuine, doesn't it? Would you log on using your credentials at that site? Well, it's a phishing site, so it's not a good idea. Right? There are a few clues as to why you shouldn't trust it. Right? For a start, the address, if you look in the address in the top bar, it's forged. It's not quite exactly right. Right? And number two, some of the spelling might not be quite right. Some of the formatting might not be quite right. So you can often find those things as well. Right? If in doubt, and you wanted to go to Twitter, enter twitter.com yourself. Don't click on a link from an untrusted email or social network. Right, so that's some of the things that can happen in the office. And there's some stats about it's something like well over 60% of attacks going on at the moment in corporate life actually started as a phishing email or social network link. So please don't click the links. Let's consider the next scenario. You're at home, right? Now, the mix of professional and personal life nowadays, right, means that there's some special risks. I don't know how many of you, whether you, for example, are using your corporate laptop at home, or maybe a corporate tablet, or your mobile device, whether you perhaps share that with your family members, or whether you use your personal devices at home to access company resources. All of those things come with special risks. First thing to do, and remember I asked you to go and find the policies your company has. We'll look at policies in another module, but one of the things that should be in there is what you should and should not do in respect of accessing company resources from personal devices or using company resources for personal use. So bear that in mind, be aware of that one. Okay, some basic advice. I'm going to read this for you and you'll see it come up behind me as well. So keep your personal and professional life as separate as you can. Don't use your company email for ordering goods off the internet. Some organisations actually encourage you to use your corporate resources for access to social media because they want to project a particular image. But generally, it's not a good idea. If you do use a device for both professional and personal use, and it's your device, then it's your responsibility to keep it patched and up to date, to keep the anti-malware, that's virus, spam, adware, all that other stuff that could actually happen to you, to keep all that up to date, right? Oh, and if you're creating and carrying corporate assets on that device, you need to make sure it's encrypted and those assets are backed up, because if you lose the device or it becomes corrupted, right, you don't want to lose the company's assets. Mind you, it's a good idea for your own personal reasons to keep information encrypted and backed up. We'll look at backup in another module. Right. So all that's good advice for at home. Let's look at the third case, which is about when you're on the move. Now, being on the move generally is a mobile device world. You could be, I don't know, working in a coffee shop with free Wi-Fi access, or a lot of train stations have it nowadays. But you're definitely not in a place that's a trusted environment. So there were some simple things years ago. I remember, for example, having a polarized cover over my laptop, so I couldn't be, my laptop could not be read over my shoulder. Well, it's a bit worse than that nowadays, so there's some other precautions you need to put in place. So let's talk first of all about public Wi-Fi. Public Wi-Fi, and one, for example, is the cloud in the UK. Public Wi-Fi is a great resource to use if you don't mind who's looking at your information. And remember we said confidentiality, integrity, availability. Well, public Wi-Fi can be taken away at any time, but really availability isn't the issue. It's more about the confidentiality and integrity of information going across it. It's remarkably easy for anyone to set up their own public Wi-Fi, to pretend to be a company or a corporate or a public resource like the cloud or Virgin or anything you can think a name of, and then sit in the middle of your information flow backwards and forwards to your company and your personal stuff. Now, why would someone want to do this? Well, they might want to steal the information, but generally they're after your credentials. They actually want your user ID and passwords for different resources, because then they can pretend to be you and then they can make some money out of your accounts. So, some tips and tricks then. If you're using Windows, mark the network that you're using as public, and that will reduce the amount of exposure that you have. Right. If you're accessing corporate resources, you may be encouraged to use what's called a virtual private network. Talk to your IT help desk about virtual private networks. They're a good way of masking all information going backwards and forwards across public Wi-Fi so that they can't be intercepted. Right. And the last thing I wanted to get across was, say you've got a device like one of these and you lose it. Well, you need to think about what's on it and what use would it be to someone else. It's important to minimise the impact to you and to your organisation of loss or theft of devices. In fact, when I look back and think about the risk register that places like the Ministry of Defence keep, you'll see that the top risks that come up time and time again are loss of laptops, typically left in the back seat of a London taxi. Right? It's remarkably easy to lose these things because they're portable. So, what precautions can you take before and after the event to make sure that there's not a big impact from losing something? Well, number one is encryption. Encrypt all the data, right? And secure your devices with a strong password. The 4-digit PIN that's default on devices like this is not strong enough. It's actually remarkably easy to break. Keep regular backups, and we'll talk about backup in another module and how to do it. But if you keep regular backups, then at least you can restore the information once you've lost it. If you're using devices like Android devices or Apple's devices, they have track and trace type technology built into them. Find My iPhone is a good one, for example, which enables you to do several things. Number one, if you lose it, you might be able to find out where it actually physically is. But number two, you can remotely wipe it so that no one else can get at your information. Right? If you lose a device and it's a corporate device, report it to your IT help desk and either get them to wipe it, or if it's your device, wipe it yourself. Right? You may also want to report it to the police. At the very minimum, if it's your device, if you don't report it to the police, you might find it difficult to get an insurance payout. right? And then because you've got a backup, remember we talked about backups? Because you've got a backup, when you get a new device, you can easily restore your data and off you go and you're working again. Right, so we've been through quite a lot. Remember those 3 scenarios of in the office, at home, and on the move? Well, you'll be aware of which one you're actually in at any particular time. So just to summarize what we've been through. Number 1, understand what it is you're trying to protect. Number 2, be aware of the risks in each connection scenario. And we've been through what those risks are. Number 3, for your own devices, keep them up to date. It's actually not that difficult. Most of them have automatic update. Just keep them up to date. Right. But in summary, treat your digital assets like they were your house keys. Know where they are and look after them. Thank you. Now answer the questions below. Right, and look forward to seeing you on the next module.